Hey everybody, Dr. Chris Dost here. Welcome back to my channel, Biblical Languages and Literature. I've put together this video on Segholate in Biblical Hebrew and Aramaic in response to a question that was asked of me on the Patreon channel. One of the members wanted to know if there are predictable patterns for these types of nouns, and there are. So we can't deal with it completely in this video, but I'm going to at least deal with some of the most common Segholate types. And we'll get a lot of reading practice in as well. For every form that we analyze, we're going to find a verse in which that form is found and translate it just so we get some extra Hebrew and Aramaic practice. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to like and subscribe. And be sure to check out my Patreon channel where all of my YouTube videos are available in their unabridged form. All right, let's get started. So before we start analyzing Segholate forms, we first need to clarify what we mean by the term Segholate. And so I'd like to look at the morphological Hebrew grammar. And in section 96, which deals with the inflection of Segholate nouns, it says this: included in this category of inflection are all the nouns with one primitive short vowel. That's really the key thing. One primitive short vowel. Namely the nouns from strong roots or weak roots which have taken an auxiliary vowel or a helping vowel, usually segol. Notice that Segholates, it's not always segol that's the helping vowel. So they've taken an auxiliary vowel, which is usually segol, hence the designation Segholate nouns. And this auxiliary vowel will occur between the second and third root consonant. That's what's meant by R2 and R3 here. And also those which have no auxiliary vowel. So one more time, included in this category of inflection are all the nouns with one primitive short vowel, namely the nouns from strong roots or weak roots which have taken an auxiliary vowel, usually segol, hence the designation Segholate nouns, between the second and third root consonants, and also those which have no auxiliary vowel. They continue. The paradigms are set out in the following order, and so here you can see what we're dealing with. Now, in this video, we're only dealing with types 1 through 3, melech, sefer, and kodesh. Melech means king, sefer, sometimes it's translated book, a lot of times it means scroll, sometimes even writing, and then kodesh, which means holiness. We're not going to deal with the others in this video, but by examining types 1 through 3, you'll get a sense of how this works, and then we can deal with these other forms in a separate video if there's sufficient interest. All right, so as I said, we're dealing with Segholate nouns from strong roots without a guttural. And there are 3 types: the kotel form, which has a primitive A vowel, or an original A vowel, the kittel type, which has an original I vowel, and the kutel type, which is going to have an original U vowel. And respectively, melech, sefer, and kodesh are paradigmatic examples. All right, so let's look at the first type, the kotel type. Now we have to be clear that the QTL represent the 3 root consonants. These are just root letters that are used in the paradigm. It actually comes from a verb meaning to, we got to be careful for YouTube, to unlife someone. Wink, wink. I think saying this English word actually affects the algorithms negatively, so we have to be careful how we say that. So the word melech, you'll notice that the 3 root letters, mem, lamed, and kaf, so the Q represents the place that the mem holds. It's the first root letter. The T represents the second root letter, which in melech is the lamed, and the L represents the final root letter, which in the word melech is the letter kaf. Now we notice in this Hebrew form, melech, that there is a segol in the first syllable under the first root letter, and a segol in the second syllable under the second root letter. But the original form, the grammar is saying, is root letter 1 followed by A, followed by root letters 2 and 3. And so what they're saying is that the form melech presumably comes from an earlier form, malchA. And so we're going to test that out to see if that position actually holds water. So in the Hebrew Bible, the masculine singular absolute form is melech, which can mean king or a king, melech. So we would say that's masculine singular and absolute. We see this form, for example, in Exodus 1:8, where it says, Vayakom melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. A little slower. Vayakom melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. Vayakom melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. And there arose, Vayakom, and there arose melech chadash, a new king, al Mitzrayim, over Egypt, asher, who, lo yada, did not know, et Yosef, Joseph. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. Vayakom melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. And so that's melech in the masculine singular absolute form. Now the construct form is exactly the same, melech. And we see this all over the place in the Hebrew Bible. Genesis 14 is a good chapter for this one. Vayhi bimei Amrafel melech Shinar, Aryoch melech Elasar, and so on and so forth. So Vayhi, now it happened, bimei, in the days of Amrafel. Now it happened in the days of Amrafel, melech Shinar, the king of Shinar, as I guess we say it in English, Aryoch melech Elasar, Arioch, king of Elasar, and so on and so forth. So these forms are all masculine, singular, and construct. Masculine, singular, construct, and this form is identical to the masculine, singular, absolute form, which would just mean a king. And when we add the definite article, really nothing changes. We just get the expected prefix he with the patach vowel sign and the dagesh in the subsequent consonant, and this is often translated the king. We see that in Genesis 14:17.
Now, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Aramaic and Hebrew comprehensive tier. For only $12 a month, you get access to all of my Hebrew videos, all of my Aramaic videos, and any English text-based videos as well, wherein I'm discussing the exposition of the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, or of theological concepts in general. Your support helps me to continue doing what I'm doing to produce these in-depth videos for you. Thanks so much for considering becoming a paid member today.
We see that form in 1 Samuel 8:20. And there we have, V'hayinu gam anachnu kechol hagoyim, ushfatanu malkenu v'yatza lefanenu v'nilcham et milchamotenu. So in order that we may be, so the vav at the beginning here is going to be in order that we may be, also we, there's the pronoun for emphasis, in order that we may be like all the nations, or so k means like, chol, all, and hagoyim, the nations. Kechol hagoyim, like all the nations, ushvatanu, and that he may judge us. Ushvatanu has the conjunction u. The verb is in the third masculine singular, suffix conjugation followed by the first, literally in the day, that, but we would say in that day, of course. And you will cry out in that day, milifnei malchachem, before your king, asher bechartem, whom you chose, or whom you have chosen, lachem, for yourselves. So again, all of these suffixed forms of melech lack the segol, and instead present a patach, the short a vowel sign, underneath the first root consonant. So when Juan Moraoka say that melech belongs to the QATL type, we see that there's something to it. But why is this the case? Well, you're going to have to tune in to the next video to find out. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please leave your comments below, along with any questions that you may have. And remember, everybody, when you're reading the Bible, context is king. See you next time.